I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast. It's a show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Miss Amilynne Carroll. She is a certified holistic practitioner and a holistic life coach. She is a devoted and trusted travel partner supporting seekers worldwide who wish to transcend the roller coaster of the human experience to rediscover the divine ebb and flow of life. A practiced student of the human and the divine, Amilynne unites the practical with the incorporeal, guiding clients as they connect with who they've always been, but simply forgotten along the way. An author, speaker, and steadfast seeker herself, Amilynne is dedicated to the healing, liberation, and awakening of all that lives. So I want to give a huge welcome to Miss Amilynne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Noah, great to be here with you and just delighted to be here with you and your listeners. Thank you.
So please, just do a little bit more, introduce yourself, and just give me a little bit about what you do.
Well, Noah, again, I hate calling myself a coach because for me, in the world of coaching, a coach comes to a conversation with a playbook as if somehow our life would fit into a coach's playbook. And so how I really like to refer to myself is as chief travel partner. Because for me, a chief travel partner knows when to be driving the car, when to be in the passenger seat because you've got things under control. Maybe I'm helping navigate from that passenger seat. Sometimes I'm in the back seat resting because you've got things on cruise control and you are just traveling great. And sometimes, Noah, occasionally with a chief travel partner, you have to go back to the gas station and pick us up because you forgot to pick us up along the way. And so, chief travel partner for me is a true calling to be able to support people exactly where they're at in life and help them take the steps that they feel are necessary to be living the life that they are called to live. I don't believe that people are broken. Does None of us need to be fixed. I don't believe that any of us are beyond repair because we're not broken. I just think that with the noise of the world so often, we forget who we are and what makes us happy and what we need to be doing to live in alignment with who we're called to be. And oftentimes, who we are called to be seems like it's in conflict with what the world would expect from us. So, what better position than to have someone who can help navigate those seeming conflicts and to live beyond that? And that's what I get to do each day, and I really, really enjoy it.
I see from one of your questions that you unfortunately had to get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Can you share a little bit more about your journey of how you found or was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and how did becoming a certified spiritual development um, and a life coach play a role in that?
Sure. Well, my initial diagnosis was, gosh, more than 25 years ago. I was 22 years old, and I was actually preparing to run the Leukemia Foundation marathon in Maui, and went to the doctor beforehand for a physical, and they found a lump in one of my breasts. And I said during that meeting, when the doctor said, we really need to get this checked out, I said, I'll go for the biopsy, but I don't want to hear anything at all from you until I get back from Maui. So I went to Maui, I ran my marathon, had a great time. By the way, Maui's beautiful. Came back and got the news that I really was expecting to hear, that I had cancer. And so, without all of the gory details, because if you've lived with cancer, you know, and if you've lived with anyone else who's had cancer, which most of us have either been in one of those two positions, you know what that drudge in the day to day looks like. Well, at 23, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Fast forward a couple of years forward, I have a recurrence of the cancer. And a couple more years forward, a recurrence of the cancer. And for all of that time, I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was following the doctor's directions, but I was also a very active participant. I learned about the medications that I was taking. I learned about my health and well-being as far as diet and trying to exercise and doing those types of things. But it really wasn't until 2007. I was part of an experimental program at the Mayo Clinic, and I got my first expiration date. The doctor called me in and he said, you need to make sure you've got your affairs in order because I don't think you're going to make it till Christmas. And 6 weeks later, not only was I still alive, but I had made the decision, because not unlike others, you get news like that, you go home and you're human. I cried for 2 or 3 days. Fetal position, ugly cry, no apologies. But I woke up on that third morning and I said, it just dawned on me that this doctor, who I respect and still have a relationship with to this day, gave me his best opinion based on his experience. But his opinion doesn't have to be my reality. And so it was back in 2007 when I really began to dig into, what is life? Why am I here? What the heck am I supposed to be doing? Because I was a rule follower from the time I was an infant to that day in 2007 when I got this diagnosis or this prognosis. So I took the time, Noah, to read and get my hands on absolutely every spiritual text I could find, from the Christian Bible to the Jewish Torah to the Bhagavad Gita to the Vedas, yes, the Vedas, to the Quran, and actually reaching out and speaking to people. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I've been told I have 6 weeks. So I'm reaching out to people with a sense of urgency, but not a sense of chaos or desperation. I wanted to know what their experience of God is, because I was raised in a pretty radical Christian household. So in this space, what I began to see is that I had been operating for the bulk of my life on borrowed beliefs. Those borrowed beliefs come to us from our parents, from our professors, from our coworkers, from our friends, from our family members, from advertisements that we see on the TV, that we just kind of absorb those borrowed beliefs and we accept them. We pick them up and they carry us forward. But at this point in my experience, I was recognizing that those borrowed beliefs that I had acquired along the way were no longer serving me. And that if I was going to live, I needed to live very differently than I had lived before. Because prior to this day, look, I felt like my purpose in life was to make sure that everyone around me was happy. And if you're listening right now to this podcast, snap those little fingers, let a smile come across your face if you also are one of those individuals who lives their life to make sure that everyone around them is happy. It's exhausting. It's overwhelming. It lacks a sense of fulfillment. And guess what? It leads us further away from the happiness that we think we're seeking, then it leads us toward us. It's a complete opposite approach to life. So in this opposite approach to life, it wasn't about being a rebel, and it wasn't about vilifying what had served me all of these years. Even though it no longer served me, I didn't have to crucify it in order to live differently. I could say thank you, I could bless it, and then I could return it back to the universe. And that was in that space when I began to see that we are not we're not taught as human beings in this experience how to live. We are taught how to avoid death. Our parents tell us, be safe. Our mama says, be careful. Our teachers say, operate within these constructs. People around us give us an agenda and a curriculum. And I began to realize that the comfort zone that we all speak about is less about my comfort and more about the comfort of the people around me, because it keeps them. They know what to expect from me if I operate within this bubble. When I began to operate outside that bubble, it freaked some people out. Understandably, because we teach people how to treat us by how we accept their interaction with us or how we set that up. And so if I'm now coming from a new place, that's uncomfortable for people around me. And I totally at first did not get it. I was sad. I felt lonely. I felt abandoned by some of my closest friends and loved ones. But what I began to realize is that when I began to live from this new place, and this new place is a place of questioning, a place of not needing to have the answer before I leap. What is it they say? Leap and build your wings on the way down. When I began to live from that place versus a place of being a control freak beforehand, it began to shift not only my health, but my life and my relationships and my career. And that was back in 2007 with a six week expiration date. Fast forward to 2019, that I've got a recurrence of cancer. Guess what? I'm doing some of this life coaching in 2019, but I had to take a step away because I had to reevaluate again. And I got the opportunity to course correct because in August of 2019, I got a second expiration date given to me. 6 months. You're not going to be here for Christmas, Amilynne. Let your family know. Get your things in order. And that was the reminder to that first experience of going back and saying, what is working for me and what is no longer serving? And no longer serving, again, remember, we don't have to vilify it. We don't have to justify it. We can simply set it down and begin to live again from the place that we know we're called from. Through the course of all of this, Noah, one of the things that has come about is I developed a program called the Life Charter. And what the Life Charter does is it has 12 dimensions of our life. And those 12 dimensions include our intellectual life, our spiritual life, our character, our parenting, our social life, our love relationships, our financial life. And each one of those 12 dimensions, they're intermingled. But if we don't know the four pillars of each of those dimensions, and those four pillars are premise, what do I believe about my character? The second pillar is so you've got premise, vision. What's the vision that I have for this, for my character? Then you have your purpose. What's my purpose? And then you have a strategy. And so really the Life Charter program came out of the work that I was working through each time I had received an expiration date. And it was working for me. And how did I know that it was working for me? Because I'm still here. And so that was that calling to say, you know what? I would have loved to have had this guidance back in 1998 when I got my first cancer diagnosis. Because it's not about changing. It's about remembering who we were created to be all along, but we forgot along the way. And so now, having walked through each one of those steps, sometimes they were quick steps and sometimes they were dark and long seasons. But today, I get to be here in this space of being a travel partner, whether it be life, spiritual, career, financial, to help other individuals learn to ask questions in a new and different way so that they're getting responses that are aligned with their authentic self, not with who I want them to be or with who somebody else wants them to be.
That's such an inspiring story. When you said earlier about when you were told that you had 6 weeks left, I mean, that's just normal emotion to break down because you think, because you're at that point, you have so much more of your life to live, and to think that it ends in such a short period of time, you really have to step back and think, oh wow, I don't have much left. I gotta get everything done. So it makes you want to get a lot of accomplishments done and out of the way. And for you to um be able to fight through that, I think is something that a lot of people would enjoy. So are you cancer free now, or is it still
It's a great
kind of?
question. I am not cancer free from a medical perspective, but from a spiritual perspective, I am perfect, whole, and complete. In October of 2022, I had a stroke and it left me quadriplegic. I can't move anything beneath my shoulders. And I have to tell you, Noah, that was one of the biggest blessings in my life because I was a goer, I was a doer, I was a fighter, I was a thriver, right? I was constantly striving for more. And what the stroke, it was a stroke of genius by the universe, by divine mind, because what it did was it was an invitation to literally come back into an understanding of what life truly is. And remember a few minutes ago, I said that the society would, our upbringing is all about teaching us how not to die. Matter of fact, we fear it often. And yet what I'm finding is that if we shift from this place of being afraid to die or living from a place to avoid dying, if we shift from that place into a place where we are focused on learning to live and to live in alignment with what we know our true calling is, the fear of death falls away. The fear of other things fall away, and the fear falls away because there's no space for it. We're recognizing that that fear was there to keep us playing small, and it did that under the guise of quote unquote keeping us safe. But whatever is meant for us is going to come for us. Do I thank God that, struck me down with cancer? Heavens no. The cancer is because of environmental things, maybe mental things. Who knows why cancer ultimately shows up in one person's life versus another. But I don't think that God or the universe said, you know what? I got this Amilynne girl down there. I'm going to give her cancer and I'm going to make her fight all her life. I don't believe that God does that. But what I do believe is that when something challenging shows up in our experience, we get the opportunity to look at it as an invitation to live differently. And when we take that invitation, whether we have 3 days, 3 months, 3 years, or 30 years left in our life, when we take that invitation, life shows up differently. The challenges are still there. Are you kidding me? I'd love nothing better than to get up and walk across the room. But my life is so much more full now because guess what? I know what makes me feel fulfilled. I know what makes me feel happy. I know what my calling is. And I can almost guarantee you, Noah, if that stroke hadn't slowed me down, I'd still be out there pursuing and I would be doing the best I could. And there's nothing wrong with that. We do a lot of good when we're doing the best we can, we think we can. But when we take that invitation to shift how we show up in the world, life becomes so much fuller. And when a challenge arises, it doesn't have the same grasp on us because we know that it's just a challenge. And a challenge is nothing more than an invitation to look at life differently. And when we look at it differently, we live differently. And guess what? That affects the people around us too.
You're such a huge inspiration to like I know a lot of young people because most people, if they were in this situation of people nowadays, would have given up. They would have given up. Um, they would not want to fight anymore and just say, you know what, maybe it's this is my time just to stop and just let the world take me as it is. I know there've been times when I've been through serious situations where I'm just wanting to give up, and I
Mhm.
thought, you know what, I just can't deal with it no more. Just
Yes,
let
I
it take me away, and I'll just disappear. And it takes a lot of dedication and hard work to not have that mentality and also have to fight through it. You know, most people would say, well, if a stroke did that to you and you're now cannot move from the shoulders down, most people would say, "Why are you so happy about it?" But I don't think they would understand quite fully until they've gone through it exactly
sure.
to understand why you might think it's a blessing in disguise. Because some people on the outside will probably look at you differently when you say, "Oh yeah, a stroke was a blessing to me," or "I'm not mad that I had a stroke." And then, but it's like a lot about what you said about we fear death a lot. I think a lot of people, it's something that gets engraved into our brain of
Mhm.
it's something to worry about and fear of that you never know, you might could die today, you might die in 50 years, you might die overnight. I mean, it's just something that this society has put into our heads of you just have to live every day like it's your last. And it gets scary a little bit because there have been situations where some people might just take that literally and they might want to live life very cautiously. And I wouldn't want to do that because if you do that, you're going to be scared every single day that something that's going to happen to you. And you're just going to feel this intense pressure here and in your head of, if I'm not careful, something's going to happen to me today.
Well, and that actually manifests into physical ailments. I was OCD. I was category 3 obsessive compulsive disorder, trying to control everything. And it wasn't medication that brought me through to where I could set down that need to control. It was thinking through what life really truly is. It was questioning. And it was learning and deciding to live from a different place of not being afraid. Now, when I was younger and traveled for business, I had two suitcases. One had my day-to-day clothes, toiletries, etc. The other had sheets and towels because I refused to sleep on the sheets and towels in a hotel. That's how much of a germaphobe I was, how much OCD actually controlled my life. And so when we begin to think about why something has shown up in our experience, it doesn't have to be huge and catastrophic or perceived as catastrophic. It doesn't have to be a stroke. It doesn't have to be cancer. It doesn't have to be an abusive relationship. Maybe it's a job that we really loved. And now we've been removed from that job. We were fired, they eliminated the position, they downsized, whatever. We get to ask the questions, okay, what am I here to learn? What is here for me to learn about this situation? What does the universe see? What does the universe have in store for me? What does God have in store for me? Whatever your belief patterns are, instead of saying, oh, poor me. Now, mind you, I cried for 3 days after that first prognosis. We're human beings, but there's a human divine coincidence that so many of us miss. We're human beings, but we're here having a spiritual or a celestial experience. And we get to build the bridge between the two. And the bridge between the two is learning to question. And not to question from a place of anger, but to question from a place of curiosity. Curiosity is usually something that gets tamped down in us from childhood because it's curiosity that would make us do something that someone else might perceive as dangerous, that we would need to be protected from. And so we stop being curious. And what I want to suggest is that if we could be just curious one time a day about one experience in that day, how would our life be different at the end of one day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? Because we are learning to live from a place of curiosity. And curiosity replaces entitlement. It replaces pity. It replaces depression, because depression comes about for us so often because things are supposed to be a certain way and they are not. And I don't know how to make them that way. But what if we invited curiosity back into the conversation and back into our experience? Look, this is what I've got, and this isn't where I want to stay. What would it look like if I, instead of setting a goal to run for 15 minutes a day with my health and fitness, what would it look like if I made the commitment to walk to the mailbox every day? And then maybe in a month, I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to walk to the mailbox every day, and I'm going to start parking further away when I go to the store so that I have longer to walk. There are a million ways that we can live life differently, and we get to, especially here in the United States. We have the freedom, but we don't believe that we do because of this fear that's been instilled in our society. Let's replace fear with curiosity. Two things happen. We start living from a very different place. And when things happen around us, they no longer have the same sense of power and control because we're saying, ooh, a stroke. I wonder how I'm going to get to live differently now. And we each get that opportunity. It's ours to take in our day-to-day life, should we choose to.
What are some common challenges people face when trying to reclaim their anatomy or autonomy or self-mastery, and how do you help them overcome these obstacles?
Well, the first key is to have a good travel partner. And whether it's me or whether it's someone else who understands that you are in a season of your life where you are seeking change, you are seeking a shift in your experience, just someone, and that travel partner should be there to listen. Listen, not tell you what to do, not give you directions, not condemn you for trying something new, but to be there to listen. Because when we are in a position where we are trying to reclaim our autonomy, our identity, look, whether we're 20 or 50 or 70 years old, if we have lived every day of our life leading up to that moment under that, remember earlier in our conversation, we talked about this idea of borrowed beliefs that we've picked up along the way, but they're no longer serving us. And how do we know they're no longer serving us? Well, because we've got this question in our head about living differently. So having someone on your side that can listen and help redirect your conversation to yourself, let alone the people around you, is helpful. And because one of the hardest things is that we teach people how to treat us by the way we show up, by the way we communicate, by our presence or lack thereof in any given situation. And people grow comfortable with that. It's a comfort zone, right? So we begin changing, and what happens? Those people are like, oh, no, 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 no. Amilynne, man, you're asking way too many questions. And the thing that we get to realize in that moment is that it's not that they want to hold us back. It's that they are not yet in a place in their own experience where they can begin to question what's going on in their life the way we are ready to approach our life from a more curious place of discovery in living in a new way. So, one of those big obstacles absolutely is the way people interact with us around. And look, there are going to be friendships that fall away. There are going to be family members that do not understand. And we get to love them exactly where they're at. We don't get angry at them because they don't understand our attempts at growth, our engagement with curiosity and discovery and shifting into living a new way. To be angry with them is actually to fulfill their prophecy that you're doing something wrong, because anger doesn't come from curiosity, discovery, and transformation. Anger comes from a place of expecting things to be a certain way. And guess what? We if they are expecting us to be a certain way and we're uncomfortable with that, to reciprocate and be angry with them because we expected them to respond in a certain way, perpetuates the cycle. And sometimes it means that those dear friends or loved ones, colleagues, whatever, they may fall away for a season while you are growing and transforming and remembering who you've been. And sometimes they'll come back into your experience. Sometimes they won't. But that's not a verdict on you or them. We grow up in this space where friends are meant to be lifelong friends. Family members are supposed to understand us. Like, why would a family member understand us if we don't understand ourselves? We're on this journey of questioning and curiosity and discovery because we don't understand ourselves. And yet we expect them to understand us. And when they don't, we get angry. And so it's coming at each moment best we are able. And early on, it's going to be really hard, but we have to get to practice that muscle of being present and being compassionate. And that compassion is not just for ourselves. Well, look at me, I'm changing. You need to be patient with me. But that compassion extends to those around us because look, you have been who you are all the entire time they've known you. And now you're going to start shifting and changing. That might be uncomfortable for them. And it's okay. The uncomfortability won't kill them. It's okay for them to be uncomfortable, and it's not your job to fix their comfort level. Matter of fact, one of the things that as we are questioning and getting curious and discovering and transforming, one of the things that we begin to set down is the thought that we are responsible for other people's happiness. They are responsible for that. So when you begin to make these efforts to change, at first they're small. Consistency is another thing that can be really challenging. Well, I did it and man, it felt good. Set trigger words. Put up post-it notes that remind you that whatever question and curiosity that you are exploring, that you are reminded to do it, because our minds are very busy. And our minds are very busy, quote unquote, protecting us. Remember, reminding us that our goal is not to die. So we're doing something new, and our mind is going to be uncomfortable with that. So we get to set ourselves reminders because it's the consistency with which we continue to show up for ourselves that will be the foundation for the evolving and the change and the autonomy that we are ultimately going to realize, and celebrate them. When we see a shift, celebrate it. And it doesn't have to be a big, robust dinner out at a, $100 steakhouse, but just celebrate that and honor it. And anytime we're picking up something new, guess what? That means we set down something old. Give gratitude to that habit that you are setting down. Bless it and release it. Thank you for carrying me this far. Not, well, gosh, if I had just done this 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years ago, my life would have been so much easier. No, that activity, that behavior, that habit brought you where you are today successfully because you're here. Bless it, honor it, and release it. I no longer need that habit. I no longer need that thought. I no longer need that belief that I borrowed from someone else to get me where I am today. But in order for me to move forward, I'm picking up a new thought. So I'm going to release the old. So you get to be more present. And sometimes that can be hard for people. Another reason why having a good travel partner alongside to remind you. An analogy that I'll give that I often do, and it really helps drive this point home, is most of us have been on an airplane at one point in our lives, or at least are familiar with what it would be like to ride a plane. And in the cockpit, there are usually a minimum of 3 individuals. We all know about the pilot. We all know the co-pilot. But for me, if I use the airplane and the cockpit as an analogy for life, the most important person in that cockpit is the navigator. Because let's just say we're going to take an airplane from Dallas to Denver. There are circumstances outside of that plane that have to be adjusted for minute by minute, moment by moment. Maybe it's weather. Maybe it's birds, a flock of birds. Maybe it is fuel. Maybe it's something internal. But the navigator is the one who is constantly checking to make sure that that flight is on course. And when the flight is not on course, they will then give new uh, calibrations to the pilot to course correct so that that plane can arrive at its intended destination. So when we're making these changes in our life, when we're approaching life with curiosity and discovery, we're course correcting. And look, I get off that plane. I'm not mad at that navigator for course correcting. I'm grateful that that navigator was there to course correct so that I could successfully arrive at my intended destination. And in the event that there's an unexpected event, sometimes that course correcting is finding a new airport to fly to because the weather is different than we expected, or there's a malfunction on the plane. But that navigator is one of the most important components in our life. And when we are course correcting, it doesn't mean we were doing something wrong. It just means we're coming back into alignment with what our intended path is. We don't have to be hard on ourselves. We don't have to be critical. Matter of fact, being hard and critical only keeps us further from that goal of self-discovery.
I really appreciate that you said something earlier about having the right group of people in your life and that some people will leave and go. I've always told people, no matter what circumstance you've gone through, whether it's something personal to you or if it's something that millions of people face, you want to have a good group of people surrounding you. You
Mhm.
don't want any negative people around to talk down upon yourself and make you feel like what you have going on is very odd and very not normal. It's I've had some people come into my life that I'm so grateful for that I've had that have been stuck by me every step of the way. And there have been some people that I've had to let go because of just after a while they started to get a little bit on my nerves, or they were just being like a huge negative light towards me, and it was a thing where I had to let them go. Or and then there have been cases where people have just removed me for whatever reason that I might ever never know.
A good
But
reason, a bad reason, or no reason at all. Yep, absolutely.
so it's always a thing of you want to surround yourself with a good group of people, and that can be one person, it can be 20 people, it could be 100 people. It doesn't matter. Just have a good group of people that you can trust and rely on, that are not going to critique you every step of the way, that will listen to what you have to say. And um, now that what you have is normal, and they're not going to look at you a, a different kind of way. So, what advice do you have for someone who is struggling to find purpose or direction in their life?
Well, I think the first thing is when we are looking at, and this is just my opinion and my experience, it's different for everyone, absolutely. But one of the things that I found is that when I was looking for direction and purpose, is reaching out to people for their experience, to better understand their experience. And what I mean by that is so for me, I took a spiritual path in that rediscovering of who I am. Not everybody does, but for me, I did. And so I wanted to read the spiritual texts of different faith backgrounds. So I read it for myself, but when I had a question, I would reach out to someone in that faith to answer the question that I had, and not to proselytize, not to convert, but to just have a conversation. And it was by having those conversations that I began to see the quality of people that I wanted to have around me. And so when we're in that space of looking for something new, look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with reaching out to a friend or loved one and saying, hey, I was thinking about, look, I was thinking about life and death the other day. I'm just kind of curious what your take on it is. It starts with conversation. Relationships start with conversations. The other thing about those conversations, though, is that we get to be clear. Notice I didn't say we have to be. We get to be clear on what we are seeking in any conversation. And it may shift from one conversation to another, even with the same person. So when we're calling on a friend and saying, hey, I've been thinking about this idea of life and death. And look, I'm not looking for you to fix me or proselytize to me, but I'm just curious. What do you think about, this big topic of life or death? Or maybe you're struggling parenting or in a relationship. Who is someone that you see, at least on the surface, has a good parenting relationship with their children, or a good parenting approach, or is in a good relationship? Pick up the phone and call that person and say, hey, I just want to tell you, from the surface, it looks like you're an amazing parent. And I'm really struggling in my parenting. What's one piece of advice you could give me? People are always willing to give advice. They're willing to talk about what you think they think they're doing well. But here's the thing, just because we value that person and just because they offered a tidbit of advice or guidance, we then get to decide if that's in alignment with who we are and who we're called to be, and if we want to incorporate that into our experience. I can't tell you how many times through my journey I've reached out and had a completely diabolically or diametrically, not diabolically, diametrically opposed opinion about something than someone else. but we had a reasoned conversation about it. And I could understand them greater and they could understand me greater. And that's not going to be just anybody you reach out to. We get to be mindful and aware of who we're reaching out to. And we know in our heart of hearts if the people around us are going to be good conversationalists, if they're going to be good travel partners for us. Or if I call up somebody and say, so I've been thinking about, my love relationship with, my husband, and, you know, I really value the relationship you have with your spouse. What one piece of advice could you give me? We get to listen to what they share, but we need to be mindful of who we are reaching out to before we reach out to them. We know people in our spheres of influence. If they are then going to start, critiquing everything about my relationship with my loved one, I don't need that. But if you have a relationship whereby which they've already proven themselves to be someone that you could have this conversation with and just share ideas, and they're not going to think differently about you or your spouse or your loved one. So it's about finding those right people, those travel partners, because this journey wasn't meant to be done alone. It's okay to ask for help and support. And the more we learn to ask for help and support, the better we get at it. Because early on, I don't want to ask for support because I don't want to look stupid. Well, at this point in the game, I don't care if you think I look stupid. If I have a question and I need help or support, the only stupidity in that space for me is not asking for the help or support. And look, we're going to ask people for help and support, and it's bound to happen over and over and over again. We're going to ask the wrong people. And we get into then reset. We know we make a mental note, not going to ask that person for that kind of support in the future. But I'm also not going to pick up what that they've said about me because that doesn't align with who I am and where I know I'm called to go.
Well, Miss Amilynne, I appreciate you so much for joining me today and telling me your journey. I think that a lot of people need to look up, and I think need to start living life the way you have, about taking it day by day and just living life to the fullest. Don't let any roadblock, anything that comes your way get you down. Just keep living life the way you're meant to live it. It's always, a lot of people have a mindset of when something very traumatic happens to them, they don't ever want to do anything again. They just want to give up. And I want my listeners to kind of have this episode as a reminder that no matter what you're going through, how big or small, whether it's something personally happening to you or something that other people are facing as well, know that you're not alone and that you can't just give up. Keep fighting for what you want to do in life. Just keep living life normally how it is. Don't let whatever you have affect that. And just have a positive outlook and all that. So I appreciate you so much for joining me on the show today. For people that want to follow you, please feel free to plug everything that you got going on: website, social media platforms, just anything that you got.
Oh, what a generous offer. Thank you, Noah. And I really appreciate it. I'm pretty sure you're going to have the proper spelling of my name in the show notes. So, for those of you who are listening, if you'd like to reach out and learn more about me, connect with me, um, everything is amylynnecarroll.com. My socials are all, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. They're all Amy Lynn Carroll. And I will tell you too, Noah, once a month, check out my website. We have a 2-day free training, and we call it the Life Charter Incubator. And at the end of that 2-day training, and it's free, we don't sell anything on the calls, is you walk away with a life charter, a blueprint of how to begin living the life that you know you're called to. So I invite your listeners, look, if you just need somebody to listen, I'm there. Um, Check out the website. Again, all of it is under my name, amylynnecarroll.com. If you're looking for a book to read, go out and check out my name on Amazon. Last June, I published a book called Conversations of Consequence: Lessons from the Still Small Voice. And it has been life changing for me and for a number of other individuals who've read it. So I just so appreciate the opportunity, Noah, to just have real conversations. It's one of the things I so love about your podcast. You know, even as a guest today, having listened to previous podcast episodes that you've had, you just have real conversations. And if your listeners can walk away with one golden nugget, it's to have more authentic, meaningful conversations, conversations that come from curiosity, not from a place that you already have to know, but from a place of wanting to learn and grow. And you give them an amazing platform for that, Noah. So thank you for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and telling me your story. And, that's why I've done the podcast, is to have people that have very personal stories and that want to have their voices heard. This is their chance to have it broadcast on the show. And, I don't might care about numbers at all, really. As long as one person that listens can relate to it and that one person appreciates the episode, that's really what I mainly do it for. It's for people that don't really have anywhere else to go and have nowhere to really fit in. They kind of feel like they fit in here and that they are able to hear stories from other people that maybe they are going through the same thing, and maybe by some chance a guest comes on my show and says something that's like, finally someone is dealing with this as well. So I appreciate you so much for joining me today. I've had such a great conversation, and I'm so glad for you to for what you're doing. It's great. So I really appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Noah.
Well, as always, I'll put all of her links below in the description, as well her website and as well as her social media platforms. I'll also put links to her book as well, so everything will be easy access for my listeners. For me, if you want to follow me, Instagram and TikTok's Lethal Venom Podcast. I post behind the scenes stuff as well as updates on episodes on there, on those two platforms. I have Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It's Noah's Podcasts. And that's just more platforms for you to be able to find updates about episodes and just learn more about the podcasts and whatnot. Make sure to follow Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcast from, on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It's everywhere. Just feel free to check me out on those places as well. As always, I want to thank Miss Amilynne for joining me today, and for anyone that hopefully y'all have a great rest of your day and that you learned something as well. So thank you to all my listeners for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.